Conversations with Coach. On this episode, I am choosing to do a rebroadcast of a former guest who lost her battle to fight cancer. You all may remember Jessica Wilson. Jessica was my very first Conversations with Coach guest. I can remember as if it was yesterday, following her on Instagram, reaching out to her and saying, "Hey, I would like for you to be my guest on my podcast." And she accepted. And when she came in, I said, "This is my first time. I don't know what I'm doing." And she shared, "I've been on one or two. I think we can work our way through it." At that time, I was doing Facebook Live, and we were texting each other back and forth during the live Facebook, and she helped me get through that. And since then, she appeared two more times on Conversations with Coach, and her most recent time was last December. In March of this year, Jessica succumbed to cancer and lost her battle. And I wanted to re-air that episode just to pay honor and respect to her memory, her legacy, her husband and her girls, who I ask you to keep in your thoughts and in your prayers. And while we have come a long way in coming up with cures for cancer, it is still yet stealing the lives of our loved ones and our friends. And I encourage you to select a organization that you can donate to for research. And the next time you make your donation, I would ask you to consider donating in the memory of Jessica Wilson. Jessica, we miss you, we love you, and I appreciate you so very much. Enjoy the rebroadcast.
Welcome to Conversations with Coach, the weekly podcast where people reach their goals and develop confidence one mind shift habit at a time. Let's join our host, Certified Coach Christina.
This episode of Conversations with Coach is sponsored by Christina Calloway Life Coaching. I am pleased to announce I will be releasing my very first book regarding overcoming perfectionism in 2023, a little bit later this year. We're still kind of new into the first of the year, so I do still have a little bit more time. And there will be information in the show notes where you can help support my efforts. I want to thank you in advance for doing so. If this is your first time joining Conversations with Coach, welcome. I am your host, Certified Mindset and Confidence Coach, Christina Calloway. I partner with athletes, coaches, parents, and together we develop the tools to increase their confidence and achieve their goals both on and off the field of play. How do you advocate for yourself? How successful are you at doing so? How important is it to you to advocate for yourself? Do you know what it means to be a self-advocate? On this episode of Conversations with Coach, I am being rejoined by Jessica Wilson as self-advocate coach. And Jessica is not new to Conversations with Coach. Like I said, she's rejoining us. As a matter of fact, she was my very first guest when I started out, and she will probably have something hilarious to say about that because it was a hilarious first experience. But growth is a beautiful thing, and I'm just happy to have her back. Before I bring her out, let me share a little bit about her background. Jessica, as I mentioned, is a self-advocacy coach from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and she currently lives in Atlanta, Georgia. She works with minorities in race, gender, education, socioeconomic, and otherwise, teaching them effective methods to speak up for themselves in the medical, employment, and personal relationship spaces. After experiencing a difficult twin pregnancy in 2017 and being diagnosed with breast cancer in 2020, Jessica knows that many people shy away from advocating for themselves when speaking to those perceived as authority figures, especially doctors and nurses. She believes that self advocacy is a crucial life skill that we all should possess, and her goal is for everyone to strengthen their competencies and put it into practice. Jessica has successfully advocated for herself against a major car manufacturer in a lemon law case, her medical team, and senior leadership at a Fortune 500 company. She is a natural, logical thinker and complex problem solver, and has used her passion for process improvement to launch a coaching career, helping others develop and employ effective self advocacy strategies. In addition to her life experiences, Jessica is a certified Six Sigma Green Belt and project management professional. She holds a bachelor's degree in industrial engineering from the University of Pittsburgh, a master's degree in industrial and systems engineering from the University of Florida, as well as an MBA from the University of Florida. Without further ado, put some love in that chat and help me to welcome back our guest, Jessica. Hi, Jessica.
Hi, Christina. How are you?
I am great. I am doing so great. We were talking before you came on about where you are, how things are going, and the fact that it has been a little over a year that we were together for the very first time.
Right? It's been a
I was,
while.
yes, I was literally feeling my way through that first broadcast where we
But
did
we
it
made it.
live.
But
Oh,
we made it.
thank goodness for text messages and things that people cannot see behind the scenes. You know, one day
Yes.
I should do a blooper one where there's just all of them. They're like, "Oh my gosh, what in the world is going on? How should pulling it all together?" But I am so excited to have you come back and talk about this topic. And it was like we were talking about before I brought you out, before we came on, that this topic of self advocacy, I feel like, can never be talked about too much,
Right.
especially in the society that we're living in now. Empowering people with that knowledge of how to advocate for themselves is crucial, it's vital. And I want us to get this conversation started. And I want you, before we dive deep, I want you to just catch everybody up and fill in any holes that I might have left when I was reading your bio, a little bit more personal. How are you doing? How's the family? How's everything going?
Well, the family is doing well. Still going through my breast cancer battle, but God is good, and I know that I will be victorious at the end of this, so I'm not concerned or worried at all. Aside from that, I think
Amen.
you did a pretty good job with the bio. I don't think you missed much.
Amen. Thank you so much. Your bio is very impressive and extensive in and of itself. And what draws my attention to it is the fact that you started out, you have your own experience having to be a self advocate for yourself.
Right.
I mentioned about you, the lemon law. I know I had to deal with that not too long ago, about 6 years ago. I had to deal with it. And in the beginning, I use skills that I'm quite sure that you as a self-advocate coach would be like, no, don't do that. But to that point, I just knew that I was in a position that I didn't like. And I
Mhm.
felt like I was being bullied. And I felt like I wasn't being given very many options. It wasn't the fault of me or the fault of the dealership that sold it to me. It just was what it was, and I
Mhm.
still didn't feel like anyone wanted to resolve it. Share how your individual experiences allowed you to say, "Hey, I don't want this to just be about me, but I want to share this with other people."
Okay, so we can start with the lemon law case. Don't need to necessarily mention the car manufacturer or anything like that because these skills would apply to any car manufacturer.
Mhm.
So while I was going through purchasing a new car, everything was great. All of a sudden, I feel like I have to keep bringing my car in to get it repaired. And I'm
Mm.
like, I've been here twice already. And so the first thing I did was make sure I had copies of the receipts from
Mm.
the uh, repair shop, and they were always trying to collapse all of my receipts into one. And it's like,
Mm-mm.
no, I need you to give me the receipt that my car was in there from this date to this date. And then I need another receipt that shows you I brought it back from this date to that date. And
Mm-hmm.
then once my car was out of service for 30 days, I was like, we've met the guidelines for this lemon law. It's under the amount of
Mm.
miles. My car has been out of service for X amount of days. Let's move forward with it. At the time, the manufacturer was also providing me with a rental. And I got a little bit of pushback from the manufacturer, and they were like, "Well, looking at some of these dates, it doesn't seem like your car was still out of service." And I was like, "Yeah, well, if my car wasn't still out of service, why were you guys still paying for my rental?" And then it
Whoopsie.
was silence. I made sure I got the receipts from Enterprise. Like, I had receipts for literally everything. I am the receipts
Listen,
queen.
I was
I
gonna
have
say, ma'am.
emails, screenshots. I have text messages that go back to 2015 in my phone right
Mm,
now. So I
mm.
keep a receipt. So I
The
was like,
girl.
yeah.
Listen, let me tell you something. People are always joking, or they're in social media talking about where are the receipts, or such and such has got the receipts. You are the queen of receipts. You
Yes, I
had
have the
your receipts.
receipts. Yes,
Did you
literally.
know that you needed to have? What led you to? Is that just your a skill that you do anyway, a habit that you have of your receipts, or you just were like, wait a second, I need to make sure I'm very meticulous about this. What made you
It's a
collect
skill
all
that
those
I
receipts?
do naturally, but
Okay.
in seeing that my car had to continuously go in for service, I went online and
Mm,
did my research as to what the lemon law. I didn't know if it varied state to state or if it was the same across the country. So I went online and did my research and figured out what are some of the things that I would need to have to prove. And it's like,
mhm,
okay, well, if I need to have to prove that my car has been out of service for 30 days, then I'm going to need to have copies of those receipts from the repair shop. I'm going to need
mhm,
copies of my rental information from Enterprise. I feel like I'm going to
mhm,
need to have to prove myself because, I'm the little guy, they're the big guy. So I'm always going to have
mhm.
to be punching up and fighting up. So
Yeah,
I'm going to make sure I have all of my receipts because I'm sure they're going to try to make sure they have theirs to discount me.
you know they are.
Right. So I went and made sure that I had receipts for everything. Once I said, hey, you guys are still paying for a rental. Why would you be doing that unless my car was still out of service? All of a sudden, the ball gets to
Mm.
rolling and they're like, okay, well, do you want a new car? Or do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? And I was like, yeah, I want a new car. And I want you to take some of the features from this one that came naturally, and I want you to put it into this one, like the sunroof. The one they tried to give me
Mhm.
had like different features. It was a different trim level. And I'm like, yeah, okay, that's fine, but I need you to make it whole. I want you to either
Yeah.
give me the money from the sunroof so I can go get a sunroof put in, or you put the sunroof in yourself. So just small
Mm,
things like that, paying attention to those little details, because otherwise I would have driven off in a car that wasn't quite up to par with the car that I
mhm,
initially bought. So
mhm.
just pay
Yeah.
attention to the small details.
Wow, you just said so many powerful things in there, and I want to address them because I want us to go into talking about being a self advocate and self advocacy and what exactly does it mean? What exactly does it look like? Because you shared how you did your research on getting the information about the lemon law. Sometimes the research either becomes overwhelming to individuals or they feel unqualified to be able to address it. And so I wanted to talk about self advocacy and what it is and what it looks like and how to overcome some of these objections or challenges that individuals might face.
I think a lot of folks face these challenges because it's a lack of confidence. Nobody knows you better than you. Nobody knows your story or what you're going through better than you.
Hmm.
I can use my twin pregnancy for an example for this one.
Hmm.
I actually went into labor at 22 weeks.
Hmm.
And so I was on hospital bed rest for 7 weeks. And while
Wow.
I was in the hospital, we were doing all sorts of things to try to stop my contractions to make
Hmm.
sure that the girls could stay in there and cook as long as possible.
Right.
Well, there was one day where everything that we normally tried wasn't working. And so they
Right.
gave me a specific medication that they
Mhm.
use normally. And once they gave it to me, my heart rate shot through the roof.
Oh,
And the doctor was like, whatever happens, we cannot give you this medication again. You can't have it. And I said, got it, duly noted.
duly
So
noted.
a few days later, maybe a few weeks later, they can't stop my contractions again. And so a different doctor walks in and
Oh,
she's like,
no.
all right, let's give her that medication that the previous doctor told me that I couldn't have.
Don't yeah.
And so instead of sitting there quietly feeling like I'm not qualified to stand up to this doctor, this nurse, this whoever, I'm not
Mm,
gonna put my life or my children's life on the line because I'm a little bit afraid or a little bit scared to
yes,
speak
yes.
up. And so I spoke up and said, "No, I'm not allowed to have that medication."
Mhm,
And she literally went back and forth with me as to why I couldn't. And I was like, "Well, the last time I got it, it made my heart rate spike." And she said, "Well,
mhm.
that's just a side effect that happens." And I was like, "Well, my heart rate must have gone to a level where the previous doctor felt uncomfortable, and I will not be taking that medication."
Right.
And so
Wow.
you really have to speak up for yourself. Otherwise, I could have taken this medication and who knows what could have happened next to me or my
Mhm,
children. Maybe the contractions stopped, maybe they didn't. And if they didn't stop, now we have another thing that we're trying to overcome. We're trying to get my
mm,
heart rate down and make sure that I'm okay, on top of
mhm.
trying to make sure that my children stay inside my belly. So it becomes a lot.
It does. That sounds extremely stressful because it's almost like when we're at our most vulnerable time,
Mhm.
these things happen to where our guard we're not as sharp, you know.
Mhm.
Thankfully, during the lemon law, you were pretty sharp on okay, this isn't matching up. Da, 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 let me start capturing receipts. Now we're
Right.
talking about a whole different thing.
Mhm.
You are literally fighting for your life and fighting for the children, the unborn children that are inside of your belly. The last thing you're expecting to fight is the doctor who is
Exactly.
supposed to be helping.
Exactly.
So, what would you say to because you mentioned that a lot of the fear behind a lot of reasons people don't do the self advocacy is because of their fear, their intimidation, the knowledge.
Mhm.
What would you how would you address the individuals who are just exhausted from the process of trying to get people to hear them and to listen? I had a
Mhm.
conversation earlier where I with some other people, and I was like, there's hearing, and then there's listening.
Mhm.
They're not the same. Like I can hear a noise. I can hear cars going down the street. I can hear cars putting on brakes. But if I hear a screeching of tires, that all of a sudden shifts things.
Mhm.
As a parent, the cry of your child is very different.
Mhm.
There's a cry where I just want to get your attention, or I'm not getting my way, and there's a cry of you need to get in here. There's
Mhm.
something bad going on. So, what
Right.
would you say to that individual who is just like they're exhausted? They're like, I've been trying, nothing is successful. How do I keep persevering through this whole self advocacy? And what's the proper way of
Mhm.
doing it?
Well, to that person, I would suggest a few things. One is to take a step back and really think about what your end goal is. Self advocacy can be
Mm,
broken down into like three key parts: knowing yourself, which again, no one knows you better than you, knowing what it is that you need, and then knowing how to get those needs met. So if you
mm,
begin with the end in mind, what is it
yes,
that you want? I want my contractions to stop and I want my babies to be born at 40 weeks.
yes,
What is it that I need? I need the doctors to listen to me. How do I get
right,
those needs met? I'm going to keep speaking up and speaking out to literally anyone who will listen. I
hmm,
will continue to raise my voice. I will ask to speak to whoever's in charge, whether
yes,
it's the head nurse, the head doctor, the owner of the hospital. I will keep speaking up until I cannot speak to anyone else. A lot of
yes,
that lack of confidence just comes
hmm,
from practice. The more you
yeah,
do it, the better you become at it. And if you get to a
absolutely,
point where you feel like no one's listening, I would
hmm,
suggest you bring backup. Everyone has that one friend or one family
yeah,
member, that one confidant that, has your back. Don't be afraid to
hmm,
reach out to them and say, hey, I need help over here. Such and such is not listening.
mm,
They're not work. Can you help me? It's perfectly
yes,
fine to reach out and ask for help. Bring someone
hmm,
along with you to your doctor's appointments, to wherever you need to make
yes,
sure that you're being heard, not just, make sure you're being
hmm.
listened to, not just
There you
heard, I
go.
guess.
There you go.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And to that point, you're focusing all of your attention on being healthy and delivering these babies. And now all of a sudden you're realizing, oh my goodness, I've got to divert some of this energy into problem solving. So
Mhm.
having some, because we're not sharp when we're under stress. No
Not
one
at
is.
all. Nope.
We're focused on that stress that and how to get it to stop. And so that, as you mentioned, there's so many different types of self-advocacy. But the one that I feel like especially is very difficult for people is medical self-advocacy. And you've shared about that experience. How is medical self-advocacy different from any other type?
I would say medical self-advocacy is a little bit different because we tend to always believe that the doctor is always right. Whenever we're
Mm.
growing up, it's just whatever the doctor says goes. If they say take this medication, we take this medication. If they say jump 2 times a day for your heart health, everyone's out here jumping 2 times a day for their heart health.
Or
You know what I
drinking 8
mean?
glasses of
Right. We're
water because
drinking our 8
it's like,
ounces of like,
yes,
it's a lot.
like
Why? Because they said so. And so when you get to
yes.
the doctor's office for your doctor's appointment, or God forbid, you're diagnosed with something a little bit more difficult or a little bit more
Mhm.
challenging,
Yeah.
it's all of a sudden, like you said, we're not at our best because now we're in kind of giving a stress response. And it's
Mhm.
all about, oh no, what do I do? I just do
Mhm.
whatever the doctor says. Versus if we're talking about personal relationships, that's more
Mhm.
of a conversation that needs to be had with your mom or your grandma or your sister, someone that you're fairly, comfortable
Mhm.
with, and you don't always think that they're right. It may be, difficult to speak to them on certain topics, but
Mhm.
it's just not
Yeah.
the same as the doctor's always right.
Yes. And we both know this, that it's all in the tone and how you approach. It's difficult to balance that when you know that you're frustrated,
Mhm.
sometimes angry,
Mhm.
scared, and tired.
Yep.
And when we get in that space mentally and emotionally, probably some kind words are just missing. How would you advise someone who is advocating for themselves medically in order to get the end result that they
Mhm.
want? How do they get the ears when you're talking about let's get someone to listen to you? How do they get the ears of the doctor first? You shared your personal thing, you just kept saying, but I'm quite
Mhm.
sure you weren't talking in the tone that you're talking to me right now
Right.
because you felt that it was very crucial. I got to get this across. So how do
Mhm.
you advocate for yourself medically in such a way that you don't always have to go far left? There are times you're gonna have to go all the way left
Right.
to get
There's
it
a
done,
time and
but
a place for that, but that's
there is
generally not what it needs to be, because
talk.
doctors and nurses are people as well. So
Mm,
being able to speak respectfully. You don't need to scream and yell, and you know how sometimes we can come off as the angry black woman, and I'm not gonna, and you're gonna, blah, 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 blah. That's not really an effective way to get the doctor to listen.
no.
But if you can actually sit down and say, hey, I have some concerns. Here's my list of concerns that I wrote them down before I came to the appointment. I would like to speak
Mm,
to you about A, B, and C. You said you
that's
wanted to
good.
do this for my treatment plan. I don't
Hmm.
necessarily agree with that. Could it be something more holistic and natural? Does it have to be
Hmm.
this pill that
Yeah.
like, you can go in and just ask them different questions. And I
Yeah.
actually have a freebie on my website with 10 questions that everyone's asking at their doctor's appointments. And it also
Hmm.
has kind of numbers that you can use whenever you don't agree and you need to push back. So I think
That's
that would
good.
be a good like stepping stone, a good place to
Mm,
start to
yeah.
kind of give you that confidence to walk into your doctor's office, walk into your next appointment and say, hey, I love you, but this isn't working. I have some questions.
There you go. And I so appreciate you providing that resource to everyone. At the end of this, if you're new to Conversations with Coach, we put in the show notes all of the guests' contact information and how you might be able to go about getting that resource that she just spoke about. I appreciate you sharing how to do it initially, starting out in a very respectful way, recognizing that the doctors, nurses, whomever you're talking to, are an expert. You want to give them honor for being that way. And then you also want to connect that to this is the research that I've done. Again, it all goes back to doing your homework and knowing yourself. Because, like you said,
Mhm.
nobody knows us better than we know ourselves, right?
Exactly.
And what happens with the medical field is they are presenting what has worked the majority of the time. Not
Mhm.
all the time. There's not going to be a one fix for everything. If that were the case, there would be no sicknesses or illnesses in this world.
Exactly.
So we know that that's not the case. We know that they are practicing medicine. And
Mhm.
with that, everyone is different. And I have said this probably more in the last month than I can even imagine. But we are not robots. We
Nope.
are all different. We are humans. We respond differently. Our bodies are going to respond differently to medication, to treatment, to the way you talk to me about a
Mhm.
subject.
Mhm.
We are different. It's going to hit different because we don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are, and that's through our
Mhm.
lived experiences. You did mention about relationships, family relationships, and that too. Tell me, or tell the audience, talk with us about setting healthy boundaries in personal relationships.
With the holiday season being upon us, it's like perfect time to go back and practice setting healthy boundaries. Um, I think of like 5 key examples of setting healthy boundaries. You can refuse to take blame for certain things. I know that
Mm,
sometimes difficult conversations tend to happen around holidays when folks, have some libations or are just around people that they're generally not around. So with
mhm,
doctors and nurses, you can hire and fire them if you don't have a good
mm,
relationship with them. But your
that's
mom is your
right.
mom, your dad is your dad. You can't
Mhm,
quite get out of that situation. But you
right,
also don't have to take blame or manipulation or anything like that.
right.
Um, I would say for personal relationships, sometimes you just need to ask for space. Sometimes folks are trying to be helpful, but now they're all up in the mix, and you're like, "Whoa, I just needed you to come to that one appointment. I didn't need you to try to schedule all the rest of my appointments and do
Yes,
this and do that. So give me a little bit of space, and I'll let you know whenever I
yes,
need you again."
yes.
You always have your right to privacy. You don't have to share
Mhm.
anything you don't want to share. If it makes you uncomfortable,
Yeah,
speak up and say that. I don't want to talk
yeah.
about that at this time. It makes me uncomfortable. You
Yes.
don't need to be forced to talk about anything you don't want to talk about. Um,
Yes. You know what? Silence is the great calming thing.
mhm,
While it makes people feel awkward, you you find it difficult to rush through silence. When
mhm,
a question has been asked and you just go radio silence, it becomes very uncomfortable, but the
uh-huh,
silence is deafening because
mhm,
what that says to the other person is this is a no-go zone for them. So they're
right,
either going to react in one of two ways. They're going to move on to something different, or they're going to take it personal and they're going to attack. So
mhm,
again, for you saying that, setting those healthy boundaries within the relationships, and obviously we're speaking of personal relationships, like family, but it's not just
mhm,
limited to that. Like
mhm,
when someone is going through something, especially a medical situation, family's scared. The
mhm,
fear is just crazy, and their way of support looks very different than possibly what
right,
you might be needing in the moment. And so you saying it is okay to set these healthy boundaries so that
mhm,
you can stay in the space that you need to be in, or the individual can stay in the space that they need to be in, so that they can continue in their healing process. How so we've talked about what self-advocacy is. We've talked about specifically medical self-advocacy and setting the healthy boundaries. So let's say we've got someone that's listening or watching this on replay and they're like, I don't even know where to start. Like I understand what she's saying and I understand that I need to do it, but I don't even know how to get started.
mhm. Come see me. I would love to talk to you. I could be your self-advocacy BFF. I promise I could help walk you through it.
Yes.
Again, on my website, I have freebies to help you get through. Again, the questions you can ask your doctors. I have a freebie up about, like you mentioned earlier, I do employment self-advocacy as
Mhm.
well. So I also have, top 10 areas that you can advocate for yourself at work that you may not have thought about before.
Wow.
And it's interesting because, we're in this kind of hybrid remote work season.
Mhm. Yes.
So there are ways that you can advocate for yourself and ask questions and request things that you may not necessarily have thought about previously.
Mhm.
If you have been recently diagnosed with anything, I recently released my course From Patient to Partner. And it's
Oh,
all
nice.
about how folks can go from being someone that was just diagnosed with breast cancer, let's say.
Mhm,
How do you go from being just a patient to being a
mhm.
partner on your healthcare journey?
Nice.
So, anything you need, I'm here to help you advocate for yourself. I have the course that has lots of workbooks and worksheets and everything you could need to download and put your
Mhm,
information in, take to your appointments. I am
mhm.
here to help. So, if you need help advocating for yourself, please do not hesitate to reach out to me on any of my social media platforms, my website, anywhere. I would love to help.
Absolutely. I appreciate you saying that. Initially, especially with the medical diagnosis, it is shocking. You hear the diagnosis and then you don't hear anything else after that.
Exactly.
It's just like, wait a second, stop talking. I got to process. And
Mhm.
you almost want to be able to say that, like, hold on. You can't just run through that diagnosis stop sign right there.
Mhm.
You got to give me a moment. And I think that if
Mhm.
there's anyone in the medical profession, when if you're watching this, or if you know someone who is and you want to share this with them, not everyone is like this. I'm going to go ahead and say that this is just a general observation. It would behoove them to have someone when it's time to deliver that diagnosis to that patient, that all shocking diagnosis, to have someone from the mental health field there to help process, to help them
Mhm.
to give them that space that they need. Yes, you've got another patient that you've got to go and probably deliver some similar. So it becomes very clinical.
Mhm.
However, it is the first time that that patient is hearing that,
Right.
and their world literally is like someone just slammed on brakes going 1,000 miles an hour, and all of a sudden we're at a stop. So it's shocking. It's shocking to the emotion. It's so shocking to the the psyche. It's
Mhm.
shocking to everything, and just being able to catch your breath again, literally getting resuscitated after you've heard something like that. It takes a moment, as opposed to you're told what the diagnosis is, and then they're running through this list of problem solving. It's like, hold on a minute,
Mhm.
got my mind
Mhm.
on it. If you find yourself in that space, Jessica is here to partner with you. She's someone who is experienced at it, and her experience comes from her own self advocacy areas that she's done it. And I read it off at the very beginning. She's won a lemon law. She's had to do it for employment. For the Fortune 500 company, with her
Mhm.
medical treatment, she's had to do it in the medical space as well. Before I let you get out of here, what are some ways, because again, in the employment arena, it's probably equally as challenging to speak up for yourself, because you need the job financially,
Mhm.
the boss, the intimidation of the boss. How would you speak to the person who's in the employment part of it, and they're just like, I don't even know where to begin with this, like, I'm just frustrated.
I guess it depends on what the end goal is. Are you trying to get a promotion? Are
Hmm.
you trying to defend your name? Are you being accused of something that you
Hmm.
did not do?
Right.
For either one of those situations, though, you would keep your receipts. If I'm being accused of something I didn't do, I'll trust and believe I have receipts of what I did do, and
Yes.
then what whoever is accusing me of did or didn't do, because I like to keep everything in email or in a Teams chat or WebEx or some sort of way that I can have it recorded and documented
Absolutely.
if I needed to bring it forward. If you're going for the document all the projects you've been working on. Um, Sometimes your boss just doesn't know all the things that you do. You may have a small
Yes.
team, you may have a larger team, but either way,
Hmm.
your boss is also trying to do their job and impress their
Hmm.
boss as well. So
Yes.
sometimes they just don't know what it is that you do, all of the things that you do to help keep the company afloat. So keep
Mhm,
receipts, talk about what it is
mhm,
that you did, what were those results, so that whenever you walk into that next performance review, you
mhm,
already know that, hey, I did this project, this was the result. I did this project, I coordinated and collaborated with this team over here. I did
mhm,
this, I did
mhm.
that. And because of
Yeah.
all of these things, I feel like I am qualified for a raise, a promotion, a different role,
Mhm,
something
mhm,
like that. I think once you have your receipts and everything documented, you have a stronger case versus walking in and saying, I think I want a raise because I've been here so
mhm.
long. It's like,
Absolutely.
yeah, that's not really a reason to give you
Yeah.
a raise. Like, what is it that you do? And if you don't
Yes.
walk in prepared, then
Yep.
it kind of doesn't work out for you as well as it could.
So we've got someone that's listening who is saying, okay, I hear about the receipts. We are kind of deep into this situation that we're in where I'm being accused of not doing X, Y, and Z. Is it too late for me to start collecting receipts? And how long do I need to collect these receipts before I move forward?
I think how long? First of all, it's never too late to get a receipt. If it's in an email, that email still exists somewhere. So you can
Yes.
always go back, and if it's been so long ago that it's now just on the server and no longer like on your actual computer, then go
Mm-hmm.
back that far. Maybe create a folder. Maybe you're a person that likes tangible things. Print out the emails, print out the
Mm-hmm.
chats, print out certain things if that makes you feel a little bit better. But it's never too late to start collecting
Mm-hmm.
the receipts.
Right.
And you can not only, like I said earlier, talk about the things that you have done and have not done, but also
Mm-hmm.
the person that's accusing you. What have
Mm-hmm.
they done or have not done? So that if, God forbid, HR needs to be involved, you now say, hey, they're saying I didn't do this when I clearly have evidence that I did.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, when I was an undergrad, I had a professor tell me that I could have got an A in her class had I submitted something on time. And I was like,
Oh,
I did submit it on time. Everything has a timestamp. And,
no.
so I'm like, all right, well, here's the proof that I submitted it on time. Can you go ahead and change my grade? And then she went radio silent. So
Of course.
I emailed her a few more times and no response. So I went to the head of the department and I said, "Hey, she's not changing my grade. Here's the proof that she said if I did this, then she would give me an A. Here's the proof that I did what she said I needed to do. Why is my grade not changed?" And a few
Mm,
days later, guess
it was
what?
changed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
I love it. I love
mhm,
that. To your point too, there are some situations, circumstances where individuals don't want there to be a trail
mm,
of receipts. And so they're
mhm,
very careful with when and how and who they say certain things around.
mhm,
And one way that I've been able to overcome that is to say, I need for you to put that in an email to me so I can get started on that. There's
yep,
nothing wrong with requesting that of anyone, whether it's your direct supervisor, whether it's another supervisor, where it's a coworker that you all the same level, but it's on a project that everyone's collectively working together with. Always try to get things, do your best to get things in emails and don't move forward without. And because your default is saying the instructions weren't clear.
mhm,
You can say that, I didn't receive the instructions clearly. This is the way I understood it. I never received the request, but you've got to start on your side requesting it. Because when you're
mhm,
getting into a lot of he said, she said types of situations, unfortunately, the burden of proof is going to fall on the individual that's making that claim as
mhm,
opposed to where it initiated from. It's like,
mhm.
I almost want to ask, well, where's your receipt that I didn't do it?
Right.
You're saying that I didn't. Where's your proof that I didn't? Because you can't find what I sent to you?
Mhm,
That means
mhm,
that, so it again, being aware and knowing how to do it, when to do it, and being persistent
mhm,
until you get what you want. And the other thing is from the very beginning, because you did mention this, the clarity on how to properly self-advocate, as opposed to like, I'm going in to ask for a raise and I feel like I do more work than this other coworker, so therefore they should give me. I will tell you this as a person who is a supervisor. You're going to have to show me in the company where the company has directly benefited, and not only benefited, but the increase in money or efficiency was a direct connection to what it is that you did.
mhm,
Otherwise, the value is very diminished in another person's eyes. So that connection of asking for a raise, unfortunately, it does have to be tangible. They do have to see where their bottom line was changed because of what you did, and you might not
mhm,
like that, but in order for you to stand a greater chance of getting a raise, that undisputed evidence of before I started doing this, the company was making this X amount of dollars. Since that was implemented, they're making X amount. And
mhm,
with the thing that is common between those two is me and the work that I did. And
right.
so that you stand a greater chance of being able to do that. Jessica, I love talking to you about this subject because I don't, like I said in the beginning, I don't feel like that we can talk about it enough. There are so many different
Mhm.
branches to it and ways to do it because it's very circumstance based.
Mhm.
But thankfully, we know how to get in touch with you. This is the call to action that I do with everyone. I want you to reach out to Jessica. She's made it super easy for us on all of her platforms: Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. She is at Jess the IE, the letter IE. We want you to reach out to her. She's got resources on that website. You need to go to that website tonight or whenever you're watching. If you're not watching it live, as soon as the credits roll, you need to be over on this website signing up for some of these resources, as well as doing a clarity call to find out which one of her programs would best benefit you. And I just appreciate you so very much in all that you're doing. I continue to pray for your health and your
Thank you.
healing.
Thank you,
I touch
ma'am.
and agree with you that it is already done. You're walking toward the manifestation of it, but I know what you feel on the inside of you. And I know you're a strong believer, and I know what you sense that God is saying to you. So I just touch and agree with you on that. And I
Amen.
appreciate you taking the time to come and join us, just sharing about it. What I want you to share with us before you leave, I'm not really sure what just happened with that technology. I want to do a final thoughts with you, and in the space of self advocacy, what is a mindset shift that you would recommend to individuals to make prior to pursuing their self advocacy?
You have to get out of the you really have to accept the fact that no one knows you better than you. If you can accept that and take ownership of you, your life, your circumstances, then you'll feel more confident to speak up and speak out whenever something's not going the way that you would like. Um Once you can do that, then you can start to make the small shifts. I would always say that once you've been diagnosed with something is not the time to try to find a doctor. Try to make sure you have the good relationships with your doctors and such prior to, so that if something
Good.
like this happens, now
Hmm.
you already know this doctor has my back. I know that they listen to me. I know that they've
Yes.
heard me. They know how I learn best. So just accept the fact that no
Hmm.
one knows you better than you, and once you take ownership of that, I feel like everything else will be a breeze.
I appreciate that, Jessica, and I agree with you. I Once you have presented yourself to whomever that, hey, I know me best than me, and I'm going to come prepared for this
Mhm.
conversation, it forces their hand. They know that their interaction with you is going to be different. They're going to need to be coming from a space of information and
Mhm.
accuracy. And
Mhm.
so it changes that dynamic. So to your point, they're presenting the challenge, and then they're giving you the solution, possible solutions that work for you, as opposed to the general solution that we give to everyone after we present this news to them. So thank you again
Mhm.
so very much
No
for coming
problem.
on and joining me yet again here on Conversations with Coach. And I'm going to say goodbye to my audience, and I'll be right with you.
Alrighty. Bye, everyone.
And there we have it. Yet again, another instance of us talking about self advocacy. And you might be like, well, Coach Christina, you've had her on so many times talking about this. And the reason is because I experience on a regular basis people who are not able to do it in an effective way. And therefore, it does not yield them the results that they are seeking. And I know that I have a resource that can help them to get better solutions and better answers for themselves. And that's what I'm all about here on Conversations with Coach. I'm here about presenting solutions, helping you with the mindset shift that you need. And I appreciate you all so very much for your support over this year. And I don't know how long it's been now, but it's been over a year that I've been doing this. And I appreciate you so much. Thank you again for your support on my social media platforms: Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. I'm there at Christina Mindset Coach. Continue to share it with your friends. I appreciate that as well. And you can go on my website, ChristinaCC.com, and schedule your free clarity call. Maybe you've got an athlete and they are struggling with perfectionism. I will tell you this, perfectionism is born out of the fear of failure. I actually have a process to help athletes get through that, increase their confidence, and achieve their goals. Schedule that clarity call with me today. And as I always say, your life is only as good as your mindset. I will see you here same time next week.
Thank you for tuning in to Conversations with Coach. Please be sure to follow Coach Christina on all of her social media platforms. And remember, life is only as good as your mindset.